Greetings and much blessings. Mitakuye Oyasin. Yes, I am back. And just to get y'all started, I can at least go over the latest avatar that y'all see on the screen before you right now. Yeah, as you see on the screen before you right now, before thee. So you you see the gotta read everything, precept upon precept for y'all. So um let's get right to it. Before I get started, it's kind of like if we're serving in doing a sermon in a tabernacle, I gotta go over some scriptures, right? So just this is my only one, so no worries, y'all. Okay. So let me get out of this. Kind of doing some surfing right quick. So yeah, get back to certain scriptures for y'all. So yeah, you see on the screen here, First Kings chapter 2, verse 11. And we have Hosea delivered in the building. Shalom, much blessings to you. If you can hear me deliberate, just put a 1 in the chat. Let's go over this scripture. Let's go over this scripture. So First Kings chapter 2. Well, Second Kings. So let me take that back, y'all. I didn't mean First Kings. I meant Second Kings. Sorry. So Second Kings chapter 2, verse 11. And she said, gave me a 1. So that's looking good. Okay. Yeah, she gave me a 1 because of the volume. The volume is good. And let me change out my banner here, the color of it, because this was from a previous live stream that I did. Just didn't get a chance to change it. We'll do that. Okay. So, what color should we go with? Hmm. Yeah. See, I do kind of stuff on the fly, y'all. So I gotta kind of bear with me sometimes. Yeah, let me get a nicer blue. I'm all about more type of blues. I'm not about singing the blues. We'll actually we'll be on fire slightly, not too much on fire, but we'll kind of go with more of a royal yellow, if you want to call it that. Kind of matches the profile on the thumbnail. I mean on the avatar. So, but yeah, let me read Second Kings chapter 2, verse 11 that you see on the screen before we go on with today's topic. And yes, good morning to everyone checking this out on the replay and even those listening in the clouds right now. 1 second. Okay. Second Kings chapter 2, verse 11, it says, and it came to pass as they still went on and talked that, behold, there appeared a chariot of fire and horses of fire, and parted them both asunder. And Elijah went up by a whirlwind into heaven. See, was that whirlwind made of fire? Who knows? But the scripture talks about whirlwinds. And, basically a whirlwind is a tornado, right? And we know that it sucks things up into the sky. So it's a portal up. It's not a portal down. It's a portal up. That's what tornadoes, aka whirlwinds, represent. And of course, we don't know. This whirlwind could have been one that was on fire or not on fire, but nevertheless, this one took Elijah up into heaven per se. So I speak to you all from the same breath, if you will, of this fire, this very fiery whirlwind that possibly could have been for today's live stream about strange women of tomorrow. And I wanna pick up where I left off with the previous live stream. If you haven't checked that out, I highly encourage you to do so. It was an excellent live stream. So I was even impressed by it because I listened to all of my live streams on replay just so I can do more precepts, just so I can do these precepts, right? So let me see that. Not giving away too much of my secret sauce, but yeah. In the scripture it said, Proverbs chapter 2, verse 16, it says, to deliver thee from the strange woman, even from the stranger which flattereth her lips. Okay. And I explained that based on the scripture, those scriptures, I explained in a previous volume to this one that this is talking about two different types of women, if you will. You know, the strange woman I defined and I broke down in the previous live stream as the prostitute. And this particular person here, where it says in scripture, even from the stranger which flattereth with her lips, this was basically the adulteress. So basically, the strange woman being a prostitute or the hoe, okay, we got that out the way. And this stranger, which is basically uh this oh yeah, let me say that one more time. Let me say that one more time. So the strange woman I defined previously as the harlot. You know, I broke that down in scripture. The strange woman is the harlot and the prostitute. Okay. And so the stranger I'm talking about is actually the whore and the adulteress. Because there's a difference between basically a hoe and a whore. So you got this adulteress or this prostitute. They're not the same people. And I've been knowing this for a long time, but it's just so refreshing to see that the scripture even breaks this down for us to understand. Okay, but a lot of people still don't understand like this idea that we see in today's time in regards to a 304 culture. Well, it's basically to bluntly put it, to bluntly put it, um, it's housewives trying to be hoes. Okay. And of course, you got this statement that you can't make a hoe into a housewife. Well, the strange woman of tomorrow actually is going to try to be a housewife. The prostitute is going to try to be the housewife. Even more so. Some have already, I guess, transitioned into that. And I think it's not what people think it is. I think that some of these prostitutes no longer want to live that life. Prostitutes don't want to have to deal with the prosecute. They don't want to have to deal with being prosecuted, if you will. So they stop prostituting. You avoid the prostitution because of prosecution. Okay. So that's what's going on right now. That's what we're seeing in these times. Yup. And then deliberate just clarified even more in contextual form about what y'all see on the screen with my avatar. So y'all can screenshot that, huh? Y'all can screenshot that. But let's get on with today's topic even more so because each volume that I'm doing of this, I'm breaking down each scripture. So just going back 1 second, y'all. All right, excuse me. Going back, let's go back. Okay. Let's go back here. Try to get out of this. We're going to go back to all the scriptures that I had used for the strange woman, like, because all these scriptures that I provided, and I'll try to go over this every single time in regards to the volumes that I'm putting out. Okay. I'm going to be going off these particular scriptures every volume. So let me do a refresh on my information for y'all, for your information. So there's 10 results, and so basically I'm gonna do 10 volumes of this particular volume. This is not necessarily a series because I'm not consistent with this particular volume, but I do put out what I put out. And so there's going to be 10 volumes to this overall. Okay. So the 10 results as far as Strange Woman is concerned is based on 10 scriptures. Yes, based on 10 scriptures. So there's Judges chapter 11, verse 2. There's Proverbs chapter 2, verse 16. There's Proverbs chapter 5, verse 3. There's Proverbs chapter 5, verse 20. There's Proverbs chapter 6, verse 24. Proverbs chapter 7, verse 5. Proverbs chapter 20, verse 16. Proverbs chapter 23, verse 27. Proverbs chapter 27, verse 13. Last but not least, Tobit chapter 4, verse 12. So, giving y'all my actual precepts so y'all can take notes. Don't just take my word for it. I'm giving y'all exactly what y'all need to look this up for yourself. And I'm going to do this every single volume. So that way y'all know where I'm getting my information from. Okay. So the first volume that I went over was basically my introduction volume, which was the first volume. And the scripture that I used was the first scripture of the volume, which is Judges chapter 11, verse 12. I won't go over that scripture again because I did extensively that in the first volume. Now, I did a preview for this volume with the second scripture for the second volume, which was Proverbs chapter 2, verse 16, which I've broken down a few times already. And it says, to deliver thee from the strange woman, even from the stranger which flattereth her lips. So we're going to go over that scripture today even more, just to break that down even more. I sort of broke it down as a preview and even just a few minutes ago, but we're going to do more on that, okay? So y'all see basically overall, based on what I've been saying, there's a difference between a hoe and a whore. And I broke that down based on scripture, how that is the case. Okay. So all I'm doing is just kind of doing more elaboration on it. So we're going to probably touch upon the definition of adulteress a little bit more so people can get an idea of what's really going on out here. There's a lot of adultery going on. Now, with the harlot, the harlot is not committing adultery. Okay, there's a difference between adultery and fornication. Now, is the harlot doing fornication? Yes, the harlot is doing fornication, but the whore is doing adultery. Okay, but let's go here with scripture. Let's look it up in my Thompson's reference. Let's go to Proverbs once again. Okay, Proverbs chapter 2, verse 16. We're going to go there. Give me a second, y'all. Some of y'all probably have already jumped to the scripture. Much blessings to those that are getting there quicker than me. Okay. So I'm still I'm not new to this, but I am true to this. Okay. So, all right. So out to Thompson's, Proverbs chapter 2, Proverbs chapter 2, verse 16, it says, uh, to deliver you from the strange woman, from the adulteress who flatters with her words. Okay. So basically the same thing I just read, but even more so, just clarifying in regards to the stranger person is the adulteress, even though the strange woman is the prostitute. So to deliver you from that, okay, to deliver you, okay. So I could, I guess I could go a little further more into this, where it does say in Proverbs chapter 2, verse 17, it says, uh, ooh, this gets deeper. Oh man, it gets deeper. It says, to deliver you from the strange woman, from the adulteress who flatters with her lips, that leaves the companion of her youth and forgets the covenant of her God. For her house sinks down to death, and her tracks lead to the dead. None who go to her return again, and nor do they reach the paths of life. Woo! All this about the adulteress. And it's also clarifying, it's also talking about both the adulteress and the prostitute. But I believe this is even more so talking about the adulteress, the whore, the gal that basically became a 304, as they say out in these social spaces. Like, we already know the way the prostitute is living her life, basically the strange woman. We're already knowing the way that she's living her life. But a lot of people don't understand the way that the adulteress is living her life. You thinking that she's domesticated, but she really wants to be feral. She wants to go out into the wild. She wants to go out into the streets. So this idea of she belongs to the streets, we hear this a lot out in these secular spaces. What they're not realizing is that they're actually talking about the adulteress. You're not talking about the strange woman, the prostitute, because she's already in the streets. Okay. Now let's go further. Let's break this down more in my other cross references. Okay. All right. So in my cross reference, I read earlier to deliver thee from the strange woman, even from the stranger. And this is the King James breaking this down. Okay. To deliver thee from the strange woman and I mean, to deliver thee from the strange woman, even from the stranger which flatteth with her words or with her lips, basically trying to spit some game, trying to run some game, trying to finesse. To deliver thee from the strange woman, even from the stranger who flattereth with her lips, which forsaken the guide of her youth. The guide of her youth. So y'all see that the companion of her youth is considered her guide. Ooh, of her youth. Ladies, y'all supposed to run into the righteous man in your early years, not in your older years. This is how you stop becoming a whore or becoming a whore. Okay, a whore basically is trying to live the life of a harlot. A harlot has always been living a certain way, but the whore tries to become that someone living a certain way. Okay, but the scriptures tell you, yeah, this is not talking about the harlot. This is talking about the whore. Okay. Oh man, to deliver thee from the strange woman, even from the stranger which flattereth with her words, which forsaketh the guide of her youth, forgetteth the covenant of her God, for her house inclineth unto death, and her paths unto the dead. None that go to unto her return again, neither take they hold of the paths of life. Like, oh man, there's some female celebrities out there. A family with a famous name. I won't say the name. I'll just say that the name has the last letter that starts with a K. I think y'all know who I'm talking about. But they remind me of that whole strange woman thing because none of the men that have come onto them return again, neither they take hold of the paths of life. See, there's a certain guy that gets around a certain gal, and she makes sure that man never returns back to his proper place of sanity or his proper place of how he should be living his life. Okay? We forget that man. We know of some guys like this. Like we know of some guys that we see like the old version of him and the new version of him. Uh, he makes shoes called Yeezys. Okay, I'm gonna just leave it at that. We know how someone affected him, and he's not the same person that he once used to be before he met her. Okay, and I'm gonna leave it at that. Okay, so woo, man, there's so much to go into this. There's so much to go into this. Okay, you said deliberate. Oh wow. Oh man, she is a dangerous female type. Yes, she is. Yes, she is. Ah man. So there's a lot to go on to this, y'all. So I had someone break down a good explanation for me, at least just about back in the days, like how this all really goes down. But one thing I will also explain with some other explanations I've been pondering on and even have discussed in the back scenes. Um, with the thumbnail that y'all see for this particular volume, you see a female and you also see a moth. Now the female and the moth are one and in the same. They're both moths basically. So uh, the virtuous woman, if you will, is the butterfly, and the strange woman is the moth. Okay, the moth flies at night. The moth flies at night. The butterfly flies during the day. Okay, and they don't really, they do similar things, but not necessarily similar things. That's for another story. But both do take nectar, okay? Both do cross pollinate, okay? One just does it at night, the other one does it at day. And the moth is attracted to the fake light but avoids real sunlight. Keep that in mind, okay? Still get nectar like a butterfly though. Mm, all right. So that's the explanation of the thumbnail that y'all see with this particular volume, okay? So continuing on. Woo, man. Okay, we're going to continue on with this. There's so much to break down from the scripture. Let me make sure I got all my uh cross my T's and dotted my I's with this one. Let's see. Let's make sure we are all good to go because there's so much I want to break down with this. Because that's kind of what we're going to see with the strange woman of tomorrow. We're going to see a lot of them, a lot of mothers that once were like I said, a lot of them are going to be trying to become housewives. A lot of these prostitutes, and there's a family like this, and their last name starts with a K, and all these gals have become housewives, but they're still pretty much um, harlots. They're still selling themselves. They're still prostituting themselves. Now, some of them do end up wanting to walk on the straight and narrow, but only a few of those type of strange women actually do that. In the scriptures for warning us about these things. Okay, the scriptures are for warning us about these things. Wow. So I want to make sure that I'm not jumping ahead of myself in regards to these precepts before we continue on. Let me go back here. Okay, so yes, we're gonna keep it smooth, and I always do a preview, which I will do with this one at the end of this particular live stream. So we're gonna stay on point. Okay, we're gonna stay on point. So we're gonna stick with this particular precept. Okay, so I want to read more on that. I want to read a lot more on that. So we'll precept this way. Okay. Wow. To deliver thee from the strange woman, even from, oh, and I'm starting at Proverbs chapter 2, verse 16, by the way, just starting over. Uh, to deliver thee from the strange woman, even from the stranger which flattereth with her words, which forsaketh the guide of her youth, and forgetteth the covenant of her God, for her house inclineth unto death, and her paths unto the dead. None that go unto her return again, neither take they hold of the paths of life, and thou mayest walk in the way of good. See, it's saying that a lot of guys won't return back to their path of life so that they may walk in the way of good and keep their pathway righteous. Like they won't be able to do that. Woo, man. So because when you do walk that way, as it says in chapter 2, verse 21, for the upright shall dwell in the land and the perfect shall remain in it. Oh my gosh. But the wicked shall be cut off from the earth, and the transgressors shall be rooted out of it. So, oh man. So the strange woman and the adulteress are both part of the wicked, and they shall be cut off from the earth. But a lot of guys end up not necessarily cut off from the earth, but they end up not getting in their true path of life. I don't know which one is worse, not being in your true path while you're living, or being cut off from the earth as a way of death. I think to be suffering while you're living is worse, if you ask me, because you never quite know where you're trying to go in life. And I can see with the guy that makes the Yeezy shoes, he's basically living that way right now, you know? So we could see this just because of his encounter with the strange woman. Like this person wasn't. an adulteress in his life. She was truly a strange woman because even her mom came from that prostitute background and she got her daughters doing it. There's a lot of gals whose moms were prostitutes and had her daughters caught up in that life. The daughter probably wanted nothing to do with that life, but she got caught up in that life. Kind of like even if you look at the movie Precious, okay? So I say this, like I said in the previous live stream, there's going to be a lot of mothers that are going to try to destroy their daughters. So fellas, it's very important who you procreate with, because if you end up with someone that's trying to cut ties with you, she's going to do something even brutal to your daughter. Okay, and it's important to break that generational cycle, because yes, these wicked people shall be cut off from the earth. These people that are wicked, like the strange woman and the adulteress, like it says in Proverbs chapter 2, verse 17, they forsaketh the guide of their youth, or her youth in this case, and forgetteth the covenant of her God. So that means she once knew about it. It wasn't that she was never part of it. She was once part of it, but forgot it. Okay. So these are not even outcasts, but castaways. There's a difference. Do I have to look this up for y'all? Okay. I'm gonna answer a question that wasn't asked, but you might have asked it anyway. There's a difference between an outcast and a castaway. Okay. But before I even do that, let's look up adulteress. Okay. Let's look up adulteress, because I was thinking about looking this up earlier, so I didn't want to forget this either. So, an adulteress, okay, a woman who commits adultery. It's that simple. So, there's more to break down on that, okay? But basically, adultery is commonly defined as the voluntary sexual intercourse by a married person with someone other than their spouse. And this mainly applies to women. This rarely applies to men. This mainly applies to men in monogamous situations, but sometimes this does apply to men in non monogamous situations if he just chooses to have sex with other women outside of his circle and he's having sex with these other women with no commitment. Okay. So that is how that applies to men, but that rarely applies to men because most men don't cheat. Okay, I'm gonna go with that slogan. Most, I know they say the slogan out there, black men don't cheat, but I'm gonna say this: most men don't cheat. Real men actually don't cheat. So let's take that a step further. Real men do not cheat. Okay, so we got that out the way. Now let's look up. I could break down adulteress even more. We might go back to that. Okay, but let's look up outcast. Not the rap group. Okay, not the rap group. We're talking about. So outcast is a person who has been rejected by society or a group. Okay. In this case, that does not apply to the adulteress. Okay. Sometimes that does happen because her family finds out what she did and they don't want nothing to do with her. Okay. So sometimes she is casted out. Okay. Outcast. One second. Okay. So looked up outcast. Now let's look up castaway. And we're not talking about the movie Castaway. We're talking about the actual definition of castaway. Okay. I'm aware of a lot of things. So just, you know, bear with me as I sometimes make other references, right? So, and it doesn't look like this is actually a word. It might just be a two words, like cast away versus castaway. So, castaway, let me see. Definition: a person who has been shipwrecked and stranded on an isolated place. That's one meaning. So, castaway, based on the Bible definition, this might have something like that too. So, thrown away, thrown out, left without friends or resources. What does it mean to be cast away? So, that's kind of where it's coming from. Okay. Let me see. So, kind of where I'm coming from with this is difference between the outcast and the castaway? Hmm. See, okay, this kind of gets more into, okay, this is what I mean. Like the reprobate mind. Okay, if you look in First Corinthians chapter 9, verse 27, that's where I'm coming from with this, okay, y'all? With what the adulteress is about. Not necessarily the strange woman, the prostitute, because she already had started her life out living a certain way. Okay. And that's kind of what we see with the K family, as I talked about earlier. They were all living a certain way from a young age. Okay. But there's gals out there who've lived really good. Okay. They lived great, but they choose to live a certain way. And over time, they ended up having what the Bible talks about as a reprobate mind. So let me actually look that up in scripture. Like they consider castaway or cast away similar to a shipwreck. Okay. Like a moral shipwreck, reprobate, like they kind of tie to, like they use a shipwreck as an example. You'll see the shipwreck and reprobate all in one word in regards to cast away or to cast away. Okay. You'll see it kind of um as two words conjoined, if you will. So let me make sure. This is just kind of a side note, y'all. So bear with me on this. Let me look up First Corinthians chapter 9, verse 27. Okay. And it says, but I keep under my body and I bring it unto subjection, lest thy lest that by any means when I have preached to others, I myself should be a castaway. Okay. Like to literally lost out at sea and wreck yourself on to shore to where you can not be out there anymore. Okay. But where does the scripture, I'm trying to get to where it talks about the reprobate mind. Okay. Because that's kind of what that scripture was talking about. Um, the whole reprobate mind was in that scripture where a person just truly, they're beyond being lost out at sea. They're just washed ashore, wreckage, and they can't sail anymore. So that's kind of what has happened in the scripture that I just talked about in Proverbs chapter 2, uh, verse verse 17. Because if you think about it, a ship loses guidance, right? It loses its sense of navigation. It's going to end up lost out at sea, or it'll end up crashing on shore to where it can't sail anymore. And so, yes, in Proverbs chapter 2, verse 17, it talks about um, that leaves the companion of her youth, where in the King James it says the guide of her youth. Okay. And on other platforms, I talk about this a lot. Like a lot of the secular people talk about this idea of dominating, but I don't talk about that usually when I'm talking about relationships. I believe a man is not about dominance, he's about directiveness. Okay. He's not about domination, he's about directing. And that directing is through guiding, through navigating. And so the man's role in her life, in the feminine's life, is to be her navigator, to guide her, to keep her on a good composition too, and compassion. These things she learns with him, through him, because of him. Okay. And the only reason why she may have great righteousness in her prior to that man meeting her was because she was principled by righteous men before, whether it was her father or just a father figure. Now, if she develops her own what? Self righteous, she's not going to acknowledge that righteous man's principles that she comes upon. And there's a lot of that out here too. These gals have forsaken, okay, the covenant. Okay, she doesn't want the guide. She left the guide of her youth. So why would she want the guide of the next man? She doesn't want that. So this is deeper. Like with the strange woman of tomorrow, we're going to see a lot of them continue to talk about how they have principles. I don't speak on the feminine having principles. Some people say feminine principles like masculine principles. I say masculine principles and feminine dynamics, because to the feminine, there's a dynamic to her. She has a sense of chaos, a man has a sense of order, but he can have order in her chaos. Not necessarily try to, control her chaos, but have order in her chaos. Like an airplane is great, but it has to have a good pilot that knows the avionics to be able to have it fly a certain way. And going back to the shipwreck, you have to have a good sailor that really knows that ship, like a relationship, right? But see, she likes to charter out to uncharted waters. Ladies, I don't recommend you do that. You need to have that man in your life. Your waters should always be chartered. Get it? You know? Your waters should always be chartered. Don't go into uncharted waters. It's like a sheep going to the slaughter. Okay? You don't want to do that out here in this world. But a lot of the feminine they are doing this. So a lot of strange women of tomorrow, if you will, just would forego of navigation. Because I just shared that with y'all in scripture. How these same ones, they probably have been around the word. They've been around truth, but they don't want nothing to do with it. They forgot the covenant of their God, if you will. They neglect it. But see, when the scripture says they forgot it, that's because they haven't been trying to remember it. That is because they haven't been trying to keep remembrance. The scripture talks about keeping remembrance, right? Uh, we're gonna look that up right quick. The scripture talks about keep remembrance. Does it not? Does it not? Someone correct me on this. But that's okay. We're gonna look it up. We're gonna look it up. hmm But I hope everyone has enjoyed this live stream so far. We're just getting started. We're just getting started. Keep remembrance. Keep remembrance. I think that's the scripture. I might not even see. I'm doing all this on the. Okay, keep remembrance. Yeah, that's what that is. So, uh, let it wait for the results to show up here. I think the scripture is trying to get that for me. Yes, yes. So, uh, yeah, there's a lot of things. Um, well, in Ecclesiasticus chapter 28, verse 1, it says, "He that revengeth shall find vengeance from the Lord, and he will surely keep his sins in remembrance." That's not the scripture I want to show y'all, but you know, uh, looks like there's just three results, but I think it was just probably the way it's worded here, the way it's worded. So, um, let me try to see. But basically, keeping things in remembrance. What does remembrance mean in Scripture? Okay, what does remembrance mean in Scripture? What we can do is just kind of get a good observation of this, because this ties in with what's going on out here with the strange women of tomorrow. They don't keep things in remembrance. Okay, they forget. They forget. It's not that they neglect; they just forget because they're not trying to remember. Okay, but yeah, remembrance is like the action of remembering something, the action of remembering things. Like, so the whole reprobate mind. Okay, the ship lost out at sea or washed ashore. That's the reprobate part. That's the part, if you will. Her uh, forsaking the guide of her youth. Even ladies right now, okay, remaining youthful. You need to take heed to the man that's trying to guide you in this life, or else you're going to have a reprobate mind. You're going to wonder why you can't have a man in your life. That's because you're not taking heed to the guidance of a man that's been there in your life. You didn't take his guidance when you were younger, and you're not taking this next man's guidance as you're older. Okay. So the virtuous women the strange women of tomorrow, if you will, a lot of them are just not going to want to remember things that a man tells them. Okay. And that's another problem. That really is like a turnoff for some men, that you don't even remember the things that he told you. Like when they have communion, right? And they what? Eat of the bread and drink of the cup of the blood. Do this in remembrance of me. Okay. Ladies, having communion with that man, being communication. That's remembrance. Keep that in mind. Okay. So there's so many ways we can go with this. So I think kind of what this particular volume is all about, now that I'm kind of really putting things together with this particular volume, it's just mainly about the fact that, okay, with the strange woman, she's going to be trying to be the housewife, whether she's going to be trying to use men for what they have just to get by, to have children as she retires from a certain life of prostitution. You're going to see that going. You're going to see a lot of that going on in the future, and that K family, that we got to keep up with, if you will, keeping up with the K. Uh, they've perfected that hoe becoming a housewife. They've done it. They say you can't turn a hoe into a housewife. Well, they've been housewives. Okay, so you can't say that they're proof. Okay, they're proof of it, and they're not the only ones. I've known, I've seen non-celebrities do it. Okay, so but what we're also going to see is these adulteresses, these females that have been housewives, but they want to try to be more like a hoe. They're the 304 types. They're the ones seeking to be like a harlot, but they're just more so whores. Okay? They're not going to fully live that harlot life like the K's have been living. And that one K in particular kind of messed up Yeezy. Okay? So these harlots are the ones that I've been talking about as far as them forgetting things that they were taught, how they grew up, and there was a guide in their life. This whole I think of this whole idea. I said this whole I think. I didn't mean to say it that way. This whole idea of like nice guys and all that stuff, man. Whatever, whatever. Scripture rebukes that stuff. She's supposed to have had guidance in her youth. And if nothing else, ladies, for you to be youthful, you need to accept guidance in your life. Okay? Yes, that's it. That's it, deliberate. A real man guides and directs. Okay. And then you said, so a real man navigates the relationship like a captain on a ship. A real man is the woman anchor. Yes, he's all that. He controls the anchor, the navigation, um, all of that. Okay. The whole the ship. And she's part of the voyage. Okay, to keep the ship together. So really it's like she's really like she is in some ways the ship. She is the ship, if you will. So that's why ladies, a lot of them feel like they run it because they feel like they're the ship. Okay, you probably can say that, ladies. You can say that you're the ship, but you forget that there's another part of the ship. There's a relation to that ship. If the captain cannot relate to that ship, he will abort ship. He will jettison himself from the ship. A jettison ship. There you go. Somebody can do a spin on that. Okay, let me type that up too. Let me uh there's a relationship and then there's a jettison ship. There you go. There, hashtag jettison ship. That's what happens. That's what's going to be happening to a lot of these gals of tomorrow. Okay, it's going to be a lot of jettison ships and not a lot of relationships. Okay, man, going to be jettisoning the ship if you continue to uh, forget the covenant of your God and leave the companion or the guide of your youth, or you not wanting to remain youthful by taking heed to that man that's trying to be your guide and your companion. Okay, so that's what's going to happen. It's just going to be more jettisons. He's going to make sure he has a lifeboat and that he's not around a he's not around a he hopefully he's not around a lot of what's those sharks uh I think it's called oceanic. I forget what they call them, big old sharks. They're white tip sharks. It's something about their name. I gotta look up their name. Okay. So while I look that up, let me see this. Deliver said, oh wow, this is real righteous. This the order of the Creator. The man is the head of household of his wife or wives. Interesting subject. Yes, that's it. That's it. That's what it comes down to. Yeah, oceanic white-tip sharks. They saying that them the major sharks that be around shipwrecks. Even now in this day and age, there's always an oceanic white-tip shark out there. So yeah, when a man does his jettisonship from the relationship, he's gonna make sure there ain't a lot of sharks out there, a lot of white-tip sharks. And this is in real life. Like a man shouldn't announce his jettison, okay? Because the sharks are out there. They're out there. You're gonna have sharks out there. Once you announce that, oh yeah, I ain't with her no more. You don't do that, fellas. I don't care what type of connection you had with that gal. You had some type of relationship with her. You don't announce your jettisonship from her, okay? You don't do that, okay? So you said it's also deliberate. You said a hoe becomes a housewife. Yep. 304 wants to live the life of a hoe. Facts. That's it. So she wants to live a life of a hoe because she forgot about the covenant of her God, and she 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 ignored it, the God of her youth, or in order for her to be youthful right now, she's ignoring the idea of having a man as her guide or her companion. A companionship, that's another type of relationship. If she's not on that, a man will jettison that ship. See, here's the deal. The captain relates to the ship. The more the captain can relate to the ship, it will make for a better cruise. That's why, ladies, be focused on the cruise and not the ship. The ship, when you focus so much on the ship, you're focusing on yourself too much. When you focus on the relationship too much, you're focusing too much on yourself too much. You got to focus more on the cruise. And that only can work if the captain can relate to the ship. Keep that in mind, ladies. Okay. Otherwise, you're going to end up just like these strange women of tomorrow, or these strange, or even these adulterous females of tomorrow. I think more so, I haven't said too much about the strange women of tomorrow versus the jettison. I mean, she said jettison. But I mean, versus the adulterous chick. Like strange women of tomorrow basically are going to be more like the K family, those kind of gals. They're going to be a lot of them hoes becoming housewives, even more so. But they're still messing with men's lives. Okay, so they're still messing with a lot of men's lives, just like the adulterous female is going to be doing. Just by simply becoming a hoe. Becoming a hoe will mess with that man's life because he's going to put all his time into her, only for her, she's just going to walk away from him, leaving him in destitute and just leaving him in sorrow. Okay. But the strange woman, the prostitute, gonna come in that man's life, just turn his life up, like using him all the time. Okay, not really loving him for him. She just wants to get an idea of what it's like to have her own children, have somewhat of a life with the white picket fence, even though she was once on the streets. Okay, but really still no thought, no empathy, no sympathy, no empathy, no empathy or no sympathy for that man. Okay, I want to read a little bit more. We're at the 48-minute mark. We're going to end this at right under an hour, just about. But it just simply says, as I read more, just going back a little bit, we'll start back at Proverbs chapter 2, verse 17 once more, and then we'll conclude at the end of this second chapter of Proverbs at Proverbs chapter 2, verse 22. So, yes, at Proverbs chapter 2, verse 17, we'll start. Actually, we'll start at 16, verse 16. To deliver you from the strange woman. And I'm reading out of the Thompson Bible right now, by the way. Okay. To deliver you from the strange woman, from the adulteress who flatters with her words, that leaves the companion of her youth and forgets the covenant of her God, for her house sinks down to death, and her tracks lead to the dead. None who go to her return again, nor do they reach the paths of life. So you will walk in the way of good men and keep the paths of the righteous. For the upright will live in the land, and the blameless will remain in it. They will remain in it. but the wicked will be cut off from the land, and the treacherous will be uprooted from it. So that's really the call of this second volume of Strange Women of Tomorrow. A man needs to just continue to live righteous. Don't have an excuse for why you need to deal with unrighteous females. I don't care how this world is going, okay? Even ask a question, how this world is going. And they're going to give you their answer, but that doesn't give you the excuse or the right to be around something unrighteous, okay? Because the scripture says, okay, it tells you right here, it tells you, none that go to her return again. In the scripture of King James, it says, none that go unto her, okay, that go unto her, okay? And we could take it further by saying even into her, okay? You'll never be the same messing around with her, basically. All you fellas out there, you'll never be the same once you start messing around with her. Because she's not about being righteous. She might pray all the time, but she doesn't live what she says. And that's a good way of knowing a red flag. She ain't about what she says she's about. She might want you to pray over your food, but she's not about those prayers that she's praying with you. You said deliberate. 2/3 of the female are the stranger or the strange woman, aka female. Oh, wow, females make righteous women rare. Yeah, yeah, they do make them rare. I agree. Yep. So, with that said, I hope everyone enjoyed this particular volume. This is the second volume of Strange Women of Tomorrow. And just to summarize quickly, strange women of tomorrow are the prostitutes. They are the hoes that will continue to make themselves housewives, but they're only there to use men in their latter days since they're trying to get off the streets. And we got a good example of that with the K family, how one of the K has tried to mess up the life of Ye. Okay. And there's no yay to that unless someone hating on Ye, right? Okay. That's a strange woman. Now, also, I broke down the adulterous woman or the one that flatters with her lips. The scripture talks about that. These type of chicks, similar to the strange woman of tomorrow, their only thing about the only thing about them is they're not trying to be housewives no more. They're just trying to be 304s. You know, the hoe will become the housewife and the housewife will try her best to become the hoe. That's what's going down tomorrow, y'all. That's what's continuing on now and it's picking up steam. And this pandemic didn't really help much either, you know. It just makes certain activities worse, okay, because of the OnlyFans that took place during the pandemic when everybody had to be inside. So, you know, these 304s, these housewives that want to be a hoe, if you will, these whores, if you will, they want to be like a hoe. They got on OnlyFans. Okay, so we're going to see a lot more ways. A lot of females will try to objectify themselves. If they can't necessarily prostitute themselves, they'll objectify themselves for the highest bidder. Okay, so hopefully everyone enjoyed this particular volume. More definitely in store. Y'all continue to be blessed.